The water of Cold Creek bit into her skin like 1,000 tiny knives as Catherine Dawson struggled against the rushing current. Her lungs burned, screaming for air, but the weight of her sodden skirts dragged her deeper into the icy depths. The shouts of the men who had thrown her from the bridge faded as the water carried her downstream, darkness closing in around her vision. So this was how it would end, accused of a crime she didn't commit, left to die in a nameless creek in the Colorado Territory of 1876. The last thing Catherine remembered before losing consciousness was wondering if anyone would even notice she was gone. Vincent Warren stood on the banks of Cold Creek, his lariat coiled neatly at his side as he watched the sunrise paint the distant mountains gold. At 32, he'd spent more of his life on horseback than off it, working cattle drives from Texas to Montana. Now he was trying his hand at something more permanent, a small parcel of land just outside the growing settlement of Silverton. His chestnut gelding, Rusty, snorted and pawed the ground, eager to get moving. Vincent patted the horse's neck. "Patience, boy. Gotta check these traps before we head back." He'd set a few rabbit snares the previous evening, hoping to supplement his meager supplies. Winter was approaching fast in these mountains, and a smart man prepared early. As he moved along the creek bed checking his traps, something caught his eye downstream, something that didn't belong among the rocks and fallen branches, something that looked disturbingly like a woman's pale hand breaking the surface of the water. "What in tarnation?" Vincent muttered, immediately abandoning the traps and sprinting toward the still form half submerged in the creek. She was wedged between two large rocks, her dark hair fanned out around her face like a mourning veil. Her skin held a bluish tinge that made Vincent's heart hammer against his ribs. Without hesitation, he splashed into the frigid water, ignoring the shock of cold that seized his muscles. He hooked his arms under hers and pulled, finding her heavier than expected from her waterlogged clothes. With a grunt of effort, he dragged her onto the pebbly shore and turned her onto her side. "Come on," he muttered, pushing sodden strands of hair from her face. She wasn't breathing. Her lips were blue, her skin ice-cold beneath his fingers. Vincent had seen drowning victims before. He knew the chances of reviving someone who'd been underwater were slim, but something about her face, young, maybe 25 or so, made him unwilling to give up without trying. He rolled her onto her back, tilted her head, and began pressing firmly on her chest. After several compressions, he leaned down, pinched her nose, and breathed into her mouth. Nothing. He tried again, pressing harder, willing life back into her still form. "Breathe," he commanded, his voice rough with exertion. Just as he was about to admit defeat, she convulsed suddenly, water spurting from her mouth as she gasped and choked. Vincent quickly turned her onto her side again as she expelled creek water from her lungs in painful heaves. "That's it," he encouraged, relief flooding through him. "Breathe, you're still here." Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes the color of storm clouds. For a moment they seemed unfocused, then widened with fear as she became aware of her surroundings and the stranger kneeling beside her. She tried to speak, but could only manage a raspy cough. She attempted to move away from him, but her limbs refused to cooperate. "Easy now," Vincent said, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "You nearly drowned. I'm just trying to help you, madam." Her eyes darted around wildly, searching the tree line as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. She managed to whisper before another coughing fit overtook her. Who did this to you?" Vincent asked, his voice hardening. "Were you thrown in?" She nodded weakly, then seemed to lose consciousness again, her head lolling to the side. Vincent swore under his breath. He needed to get her warm and dry immediately. Hypothermia would kill her just as surely as drowning if he didn't act fast. He gathered her limp form in his arms and carried her to where Rusty waited patiently. With some difficulty, he managed to drape her over the saddle before mounting behind her, supporting her with one arm while holding the reins with the other. "Hold on, miss," he murmured, though he doubted she could hear him. "My cabin's not far." Vincent's cabin was small but sturdy, built by his own hands over the past year. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and he'd managed to acquire a few pieces of simple furniture, a table with 2 chairs, a narrow bed pushed against the far wall, and a rocking chair positioned near the hearth. After getting her inside, he built up the fire and faced a dilemma. Her clothes were soaked through, but the idea of undressing an unconscious woman made him uncomfortable. Still, leaving her in wet clothing could kill her. Vincent settled for removing her boots and outer garments, wrapping her in every blanket he owned, and positioning her close to the fire. Only then did he take a proper look at her face. She was beautiful, despite the circumstances: high cheekbones, a delicate nose, and full lips that were regaining their natural color as warmth returned to her body. Her dark hair, now beginning to dry, showed hints of auburn in the firelight. More concerning than her appearance, however, were the bruises on her wrists and a cut above her eye that hadn't come from the creek. Someone had hurt this woman before throwing her into the water. Vincent's jaw clenched. He'd never understood men who used their strength against those weaker than themselves. His father had taught him better than that. He put coffee on to boil and began preparing a simple broth, keeping one eye on his unexpected guest. Just as the coffee started percolating, she stirred, a soft moan escaping her lips. Vincent approached slowly, not wanting to frighten her. "Miss? Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened, confusion giving way to fear as she realized she was in an unfamiliar place with a stranger. She sat up quickly, clutching the blankets to her chest, then winced at what must have been considerable pain. "Where am I? Who are you?" Her voice was hoarse from the creek water. "Name's Vincent Warren. This is my cabin, about 2 miles from where I found you in Cold Creek. I brought you here to warm up." He kept his distance, hands visible to show he meant no harm. "May I ask your name, miss?" She hesitated, eyes darting toward the door, as if calculating her chances of escape. "Catherine," she finally said. "Catherine Dawson." "Well, Miss Dawson, you've had quite a morning. Care to tell me how you ended up in that creek?" Catherine's hands trembled as they clutched the blankets tighter. "They said I stole it. I didn't. I swear I didn't, but they wouldn't listen." Her voice cracked. "Sheriff Blackwood's pocket watch. It disappeared while I was cleaning at the hotel, and because I was the only one in his room that day." She trailed off, tears welling in her eyes. Vincent handed her a cup of coffee, which she accepted with shaking hands. "The sheriff accused you of theft?" he asked incredulously. She shook her head. "Not directly. It was his deputy and some men from town. They said they were taking me to the jailhouse to wait for the sheriff's return, but instead they—" A sob caught in her throat. "They took me to the bridge at Coldwater Crossing. Said they were saving the town the expense of a trial, that a thief wasn't worth the trouble." Vincent's blood boiled at the thought. Frontier justice could be harsh, but what she described wasn't justice at all. It was attempted murder. "And the watch? Did you take it?" "No." The vehemence in her voice was unmistakable. "I've worked at that hotel for 3 years, never took a thing that wasn't mine. Mrs. Hampton can vouch for me, she owns the place." Vincent nodded, believing her. "When you're stronger, we'll ride into town and clear this up. Sheriff Blackwood is a reasonable man. His deputy, however—" He let the thought hang unfinished. Catherine's eyes widened with panic. "No, I can't go back there. Deputy Landon will kill me for certain this time. You can't just disappear. If you run, it'll look like an admission of guilt." "What choice do I have? My word against the deputies?" She looked down at her hands. "No one will believe a hotel maid over a lawman." Vincent considered this. She had a point. Law enforcement in these parts was often more about who you knew than what was right. "Rest today," he finally said. "Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do. You're safe here for now." That seemed to calm her somewhat, though wariness remained in her eyes. Vincent couldn't blame her. She had no reason to trust him or any man after what she'd been through. As the day progressed, Catherine regained some of her strength. Vincent gave her some of his own clothes to wear while her dress dried by the fire, trousers rolled up several times at the cuff and a flannel shirt that swallowed her slight frame. The outfit was hardly proper, but it was better than sitting in damp undergarments. Vincent busied himself with chores, giving her space. He checked his traps again, chopped more firewood, and tended to Rusty. When he returned to the cabin in the late afternoon, he found Catherine standing at the small window, staring out at the mountains. "Beautiful country," he commented, setting down an armload of split logs. "It is," she agreed softly. "I came west 4 years ago after my parents died. Thought I'd find a new beginning." "And did you?" A sad smile touched her lips. "For a while. Silverton was good to me until yesterday." Vincent began preparing a simple supper of beans, salt pork, and cornbread. To his surprise, Catherine insisted on helping, taking over the cornbread preparation with practiced hands. "Been a while since I had a home-cooked meal with company," Vincent admitted as they sat down to eat. "Do you live out here alone year-round?" she asked, seeming genuinely curious. "Going on 2 years now. Spent most of my life on cattle drives before that. Decided it was time to put down some roots." He shrugged. "Still do some work for neighboring ranches when they need an extra hand. It must get lonely. Sometimes, but I've got Rusty for company, and the mountains have a way of talking to a man if he listens closely enough." A comfortable silence fell between them as they ate. Vincent found himself studying her when she wasn't looking. Despite what she'd been through, there was a quiet dignity about Catherine that impressed him. Many women would have fallen apart after such an ordeal. As night fell, another awkward situation presented itself: sleeping arrangements. The cabin had only one bed. "You take the bed," Vincent said firmly. "I'll make do on the floor by the fire." "I can't put you out of your bed," Catherine protested. "You've already done so much." "I've slept on the ground more nights than I can count, Miss Dawson. One more won't hurt me none." She looked like she wanted to argue further, but finally nodded her thanks. Vincent lay awake long after Catherine's breathing had evened out in sleep. Something about her story troubled him. Why would Deputy Landon risk murder over a missing pocket watch? Even a valuable one wouldn't justify such an extreme reaction. There had to be more to it. Morning brought heavy clouds and the promise of snow. Vincent woke to find Catherine already up, stoking the fire and heating water for coffee. "Hope you don't mind," she said when she noticed him watching. "Seemed the least I could do." "Not at all." He sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Sleep well?" "Better than expected." She handed him a steaming cup. "Thank you for everything." Vincent nodded, accepting the coffee. "We need to decide what to do. Can't keep you hidden away forever, though part of me is tempted to try." The last part slipped out unbidden, causing him to clear his throat awkwardly. A faint blush colored Catherine's cheeks, but she continued. "I've been thinking about that. Mrs. Hampton, my employer, she might help us. She never liked Deputy Landon. Said he was too quick with his fists when he'd been drinking." "That's something at least. Anyone else who might stand up for you?" Catherine thought for a moment. "Dr. Fletcher sometimes. He treated me once when I fell ill last winter, refused payment when he learned I was sending most of my wages to my sister in Kansas." "You have family there?" "Just Emma. She's 19, living with our aunt. I've been saving to bring her west." Her expression fell. "Those savings were in my room at the boarding house. I suppose they're lost to me now." Vincent made a decision then. "Here's what we'll do. I'll ride into town first, speak with Mrs. Hampton and the doctor, feel out the situation before bringing you back. If things look bad, we'll come up with another plan." Catherine looked skeptical. "And if Landon sees you asking questions?" "I'll be careful. Say I'm looking to hire help at my place if anyone asks." He paused. "Do you trust me to do this?" Their eyes met across the small room. After a long moment, she nodded. "I don't have much choice, but yes, I think I do trust you, Mr. Warren." "Vincent," he corrected, If we're going to get through this together, you might as well use my given name. Vincent, she repeated softly, and you should call me Catherine. The ride to Silverton took longer than usual as Vincent picked his way carefully through the trails, wary of being seen. The town had grown considerably in the 4 years since silver had been discovered in the nearby mountains. What had once been little more than a trading post now boasted several streets lined with businesses, a hotel, 2 saloons, a general store, the sheriff's office, and various other establishments catering to miners and the families that had followed them. Vincent left Rusty hitched behind the general store and made his way to the Hampton Hotel. A brass bell tinkled as he entered the lobby. Mrs. Hampton, a stout woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, looked up from her ledger. Recognition flickered across her face. Mr. Warren. Don't often see you in town these days. Mrs. Hampton, he tipped his hat. Was hoping to have a word with you, private-like, if possible. Curiosity sparked in her eyes, but she nodded, leading him to a small office behind the reception desk. Once the door closed, she fixed him with a shrewd look. This about Catherine, isn't it? Heard what happened. Terrible business. Vincent blinked in surprise. You know she's alive? So she did survive. Relief softened Mrs. Hampton's features. Rumor had it she'd drowned, but I didn't believe it. Too stubborn to die that easy, that girl. She didn't steal that watch, Vincent said firmly. Course she didn't. Catherine's honest to a fault. Mrs. Hampton lowered her voice. That watch was a cover. The real reason Landon wanted her gone is she saw something she shouldn't have. What do you mean? 3 nights ago, Catherine was delivering fresh linens to the rooms. She walked in on Landon and Judge Harris dividing up money, a lot of money. Catherine told me they had bags of coins on the bed, more cash than either man should have had. When they saw her, Landon threatened her, said she'd regret it if she mentioned what she saw to anyone. Vincent's mind raced. And then the pocket watch conveniently went missing. Mrs. Hampton nodded grimly. Sheriff Blackwood's been away in Denver for 2 weeks, due back tomorrow. Landon's been getting bolder in his absence. I suspect he and the judge have been taking bribes from mining companies, maybe worse. Catherine's in danger as long as she knows what they're doing, Vincent realized aloud. Where is she now? Safe, at my cabin. He hesitated. We need proof of what Landon's up to, something concrete to take to Sheriff Blackwood. Mrs. Hampton tapped her fingers on the desk thoughtfully. Judge Harris keeps a lockbox in his room here, room 4. Been staying with us while the courthouse is being expanded. If there's evidence, it might be there. You suggesting I break into a judge's room? Vincent asked incredulously. I'm suggesting I might accidentally leave the passkey where someone could find it while I'm busy elsewhere. She met his gaze steadily. Catherine's a good girl. Doesn't deserve what's happened to her. Vincent weighed his options. Breaking into a judge's room could land him in serious trouble, possibly even a hanging offense if it was construed as an attempted robbery. But leaving Catherine vulnerable to Landon's machinations wasn't acceptable either. When would the judge be out of his room? He takes dinner at the Silver Spoon every evening at 7, usually gone at least an hour. Mrs. Hampton stood. If someone were to be in the upstairs hallway around that time, they might find the passkey on the small table by the stairs. Hypothetically speaking, of course, Vincent nodded. Hypothetically understood. He spent the rest of the day gathering information discreetly. A visit to Dr. Fletcher confirmed that the physician had a high opinion of Catherine. The doctor also revealed that Judge Harris had recently ruled in favor of the Silverton Mining Company in 3 separate disputes over land claims, despite clear evidence that the company had falsified documents. By evening, Vincent found himself in the upstairs hallway of the Hampton Hotel, the passkey heavy in his palm. The judge had left for dinner 10 minutes earlier, spotted through the window heading toward the Silver Spoon restaurant. Room 4 was at the end of the hallway. Vincent unlocked it quietly and slipped inside, closing the door behind him. The room was opulent by Silverton standards, a large four-poster bed, a writing desk, and a washstand with a porcelain basin. A trunk sat at the foot of the bed, and a wardrobe stood against the far wall. Vincent worked methodically, searching for the lockbox Mrs. Hampton had mentioned. He found it under the bed, an iron strongbox about the size of a Bible. It was locked, of course. He carried it to the desk and examined the lock. Simple, thankfully. Using a letter opener from the desk, he managed to spring it open after several tense minutes. Inside, he found what he was looking for. Stacks of banknotes, a ledger with payments recorded from various mining interests, and most damning of all, a letter from the owner of Silverton Mining Company outlining a scheme to defraud legitimate claim holders of their land. Vincent pocketed the letter and the most incriminating pages from the ledger. Taking everything would alert the judge immediately that he had been robbed. This way, it might take time for him to notice the missing documents. Just as he was replacing the lockbox under the bed, he heard voices in the hallway, one of them unmistakably Judge Harris. He'd returned far earlier than expected. Vincent froze as a key turned in the lock. With nowhere to hide, he straightened up, preparing for a confrontation. The door swung open to reveal the judge, a corpulent man in his 60s, and Deputy Landon. Both men stopped short at the sight of Vincent. "What the hell?" Landon's hand moved to his gun. Vincent raised his hand slowly. "Evening, gentlemen." "Warren." Landon's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing in the judge's room?" "Looking for answers." Vincent's mind raced. He needed to get out of this situation alive if he was going to help Catherine. "Answers about what?" Judge Harris demanded, his jowls quivering with indignation. "About why your deputy tried to murder Catherine Dawson." Landon's face darkened. "That thieving little—" "She didn't steal anything," Vincent interrupted. "She saw you two dividing up bribe money. That's why you tried to kill her." "Ridiculous accusations," the judge sputtered, though his complexion had gone pale. "Deputy, arrest this man for breaking and entering." Landon drew his gun, a nasty smile spreading across his face. "With pleasure. Though I'm afraid Mr. Warren might resist arrest. Might have to shoot him in self-defense." Vincent tensed, preparing to lunge at the deputy, when another voice spoke from the doorway behind the two men. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Landon." All three men turned to see Sheriff Blackwood standing in the hallway, his own gun drawn. A tall, lean man with a weather-beaten face and sharp eyes. Blackwood was known as a fair but uncompromising lawman. "Sheriff!" Landon nearly dropped his gun in surprise. "You're back early." "Fortunate timing, it seems." Blackwood's gaze took in the scene. "Lower your weapon, deputy." Landon hesitated, then slowly holstered his gun. "Now," Blackwood continued, "someone want to tell me what's going on here?" For the next hour, in the sheriff's office, Vincent laid out everything finding Catherine in the creek, her story, and what he'd discovered about the judge and deputy's corruption. He produced the documents he'd taken from the lockbox as evidence. Sheriff Blackwood listened without interruption, his expression growing darker as the tale unfolded. Judge Harris and Deputy Landon sat in chairs across the room, under the watchful eye of two hastily deputized townsmen. "And where is Miss Dawson now?" Blackwood asked when Vincent finished. "Safe. I'll bring her to town when I know she won't be harmed." The sheriff nodded thoughtfully. "These documents are damning, but we'll need her testimony too." He turned to the judge and deputy. "You two are in a world of trouble. Attempted murder, corruption, bribery. Enough to send you both to territorial prison for many years." "You can't believe this saddle tramp over us," Judge Harris protested. "We're respected men in this community." "Not for long," Blackwood replied coldly. "I've had suspicions about you two for months. Miss Dawson's testimony will be the final piece I need." He looked back at Vincent. "Bring her in tomorrow. You have my word, she'll be protected." Vincent rode back to his cabin under a sky full of stars, his mind replaying the events of the day. Sheriff Blackwood had assured him that Catherine would receive justice, but Vincent couldn't help worrying about what would happen afterward. Would she stay in Silverton? Return to her job at the hotel? The thought of her leaving caused an unexpected tightness in his chest. The cabin windows glowed with warm light as he approached. He dismounted, took care of Rusty, and then paused at the door, suddenly uncertain. Catherine opened it before he could knock. "You're back!" Relief colored her voice. "I was worried something had happened." The sight of her wearing his too large clothes, her hair loose around her shoulders, concern for him evident in her eyes, made something shift inside Vincent. He realized with startling clarity that in the short time he'd known her, Catherine Dawson had worked her way into his heart. "It's all going to be all right," he told her, stepping inside. "Sheriff Blackwood is back. Landon and Judge Harris are in custody." Her eyes widened. "Truly?" He nodded, explaining everything that had transpired in town. Catherine listened intently, her expression changing from disbelief to hope. "So it's over?" she asked when he finished. "I can go back?" "Blackwood wants your testimony tomorrow, but yes, you're cleared of any wrongdoing." Vincent hesitated. "What will you do after? Return to the hotel?" Catherine looked around the small cabin, then back at him. "I don't know. Everything's happened so quickly." She took a step closer to him. "What would you want me to do?" The question hung in the air between them. Vincent swallowed hard. "I'd want you to stay," he admitted quietly. "Not as a guest, not forever if you don't wish it, but long enough for us to see if—" He trailed off, uncertain how to express feelings he was only beginning to understand himself. Catherine's eyes softened. "If what? If what I'm feeling for you might be something you could feel too." The words came out in a rush. "I know it's fast, too fast maybe, but when I pulled you from that creek, something changed for me, and these past 2 days getting to know you—" He shook his head, frustrated by his inability to articulate his emotions. Catherine saved him by closing the distance between them and placing her hand gently on his cheek. "I feel it too. When you said breathe, you're still here. It was like you were speaking to more than just my body, like you were waking up something inside me that had been drowning for a long time." Vincent covered her hand with his own, turning his face to press a kiss to her palm. "Stay then, at least for a while. See where this leads." Her answer was to rise on tiptoe and press her lips softly to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but deepened as Vincent's arms wrapped around her waist, drawing her closer. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Catherine smiled. "I'll stay." The next morning, they rode into Silverton together. Catherine gave her testimony to Sheriff Blackwood, her voice steady as she recounted both what she'd seen in Judge Harris's room and the attempt on her life. With her account and the evidence Vincent had recovered, the case against Landon and the judge was irrefutable. News of the corruption scandal spread quickly through town. By afternoon, Catherine found herself treated not as a suspected thief, but as something of a local hero. Mrs. Hampton insisted she could return to her job at the hotel whenever she wished, and even offered her a better position as assistant manager. "Thank you, but I think I need a change," Catherine told her employer. "I'm not sure yet what that will be, but I know it's time for something different." Mrs. Hampton's knowing gaze shifted to Vincent, who stood nearby. "I think I understand. Just know there's always a place for you here if you need it." As winter settled over the Colorado mountains, Catherine indeed found something different. She moved into Vincent's cabin, not as a guest, but as a partner in building a life together. Her sister Emma came west to join them after Catherine sent for her, bringing youthful energy and another pair of hands to help with the homestead. Over the next months, the small cabin expanded, a new room added for Emma, the beginnings of a proper barn for Rusty and the 2 mares Vincent purchased. Catherine started a kitchen garden as soon as the spring thaw allowed, and even convinced Vincent to help her plant apple seedlings that would take years to bear fruit. "We'll be here to see it," she told him when he pointed this out. "This is home now." A year to the day after Vincent pulled her from Cold Creek, they were married in a simple ceremony in Silverton. Sheriff Blackwood gave the bride away, and Mrs. Hampton hosted the celebration at her hotel afterward. That evening, as they stood on the porch of their expanded cabin, looking out over the land that was slowly transforming under their care, Vincent wrapped his arms around Catherine from behind. "Happy?" he asked, his breath warm against her ear. She leaned back into his embrace. "More than I ever thought possible." She turned in his arms to face him. "Do you ever think about that day at the creek?" "Every day," he admitted. "I thank God I decided to check those traps that morning." "When you told me to breathe, that I was still here," she touched his face gently. "You gave me more than my life back. You gave me a future." Vincent kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and certainty. They had faced death and corruption, built a home from nearly nothing, and found in each other the kind of love that strengthened with each passing day. As the stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, Catherine knew with absolute certainty that being thrown into Cold Creek, terrible as it had been, had ultimately led her exactly where she was meant to be, in the arms of a man who had not only saved her life, but had shown her how to truly live it. And somewhere in the distance, Cold Creek continued its eternal journey through the mountains, indifferent to the human dramas that unfolded along its banks, yet forever part of a story of rescue, renewal, and a love that had emerged from its icy depths.